Basil of Baker Street by Eve Titus. Chapter 3 The Telltale Footprints. It was well past midnight. A tiny nightlight glowed in the windows of the closed shop, the last in the row. Homestead ended there. Beyond lay the blackness of the cellar, vast and menacing. Basil paced back and forth, pondering the problem. If I remember rightly, there should be an emergency exit 10 yards ahead. There is, Basil, but it is in the darkest part of the cellar, and no one ever goes there. He gripped my arm. Then we shall be the first. There may be clues. Light the candle, Dawson. I did as he asked. He took out his pocket magnifying glass and peered through it, stooping low as he moved slowly towards the door. Not 1 inch of ground escaped his sharp eyes. I was surprised to find that the emergency door was wide open. Basil studied the pavement. Ah, the dust here has been recently disturbed. Flinging himself full length upon the ground, he used his lens both inside and outside the door. Dawson, this dust has a story to tell. There are 3 sets of big footprints and 2 sets of little ones. The owner of one big set went inside as far as the sweet shop, while his friends waited outside. There are no signs of a struggle here. The small footprints followed the big ones willingly. His face was stern as he rose to his full height. The twins have always been warned not to talk to strangers. Picture the pair on their way to the sweet shop. Sad because it is near the end of the week and their allowance is almost gone. Just beyond the shop stands a smiling stranger, in whose outstretched paws they see something most tempting. French chocolates. He beckons, and they follow, completely forgetting their parents' warnings. He closed the door. There is nothing more we can learn here. Back in our rooms, Basil filled his berrywood pipe and curled up in an easy chair, deep in thought. I skimmed the pages of the London Mouse Daily. At last, Basil spoke. A sinister plot has been hatched by a daring band of criminals. It cannot be money they want, for the Proudfoots have scarcely a crumb to their name. Mark my words, Dawson, this gang is after something more important to them than money. What it may be, we have yet to learn. Kidnappers usually send a note. I expect they will get in touch with us soon, possibly tomorrow. Unwinding his long legs, he strode over to the wooden mantelpiece, where he stood staring at his treasured collection of Holmes souvenirs. There were scraps of paper his hero had written upon, old pen points he had used, a torn blotter, a broken pocket lens, a whittling of Holmes done by Basil himself, and other odds and ends. No doubt the master would have solved this case by now, said my companion glumly. Not even he could have done more than you have, Basil, with so few clues. Perhaps, he muttered impatiently, but how maddening it is to sit and wait. Think of those poor children, heaven knows where. The detective's face darkened, and his eyes flashed fire. Dawson, the most contemptible creatures on the face of this earth are kidnappers. They are indeed the lowest of the low. Chapter 4 A Day of Suspense. All the next morning, Basil lounged about in his Persian robe, his mood one of blackest gloom. Mr. Proudfoot called upon us. Basil told him he was awaiting word from those responsible for the twins' disappearance.
"Then it is as I feared,"
said the father grimly.
"Angela and Agatha have been kidnapped."
"That is what the clues indicate," the detective admitted. "However, I promised to bring them back unharmed, and I shall." Mr. Proudfoot brightened.
"I'll repeat your words to my wife. We have the utmost faith in you."
After lunch, Basil took out the block of wood he was whittling into a violin. He had been working on it for some weeks. As he whittled, I could tell that his keen brain was busy with the clues that he had thus far uncovered. At one point, he announced, "I believe I have deduced what the criminals want. If I am right, our town's entire future is in peril. Ask me nothing now. I shall learn whether my suspicions are correct when the kidnapper's note arrives." I had 100 questions, but kept silent, continuing to read Mouse About Town, a library book. From time to time the doorbell rang, Mrs. Judson answered, and I could hear children inquiring after the twins. She said sadly that there was no news. The day dragged on. Late in the afternoon, Basil held up the finished violin, a fine piece of work. He snipped off part of the E string taken from Mr. Holmes' basket and put it on his own instrument. "Now that I have all 4 strings, I, too, shall make music. I studied the violin many years ago, and must surely remember a little of what I learned." "I hope so, Basil. Nothing pains me more than badly played music." He bowed his head. "I shall do my best." But, alas, he attempted the difficult Paganini piece Mr. Holmes had played the night before. Terribly out of practice, he struck so many wrong notes that I put my paws to my ears. "In heaven's name, stop! For my sake, and for poor Paganini's too. We are suffering." He twanged one of the strings. "My dear doctor, be comforted by the thought that these strings are made of catgut." Chuckling, I rang for Mrs. Judson, who soon bustled in with our tea. Holding my cup, I strolled over to the window. Baker Street was covered with ice. Walking was unsafe, and the street was practically deserted. Suddenly, I saw a plump, middle-aged mouse slipping and sliding along, squinting up at the house numbers. "Basil, there's a strange mouse outside." He rushed over and drew aside the lace curtain. "Ah, our long wait is over. Unless I am much mistaken, this is the messenger from the kidnappers." Thank you for listening to Grandad Ork. You can hear more stories by going to the Grandad Ork channel, and if you want to hear stories read back to back, then have a look in the playlists. If you subscribe to the channel, then you'll know when a new one is ready. The books are available in most high street stores, libraries, and there are links to some online sellers in the description below if you don't have a copy. So, until next time, bye for now.